introduce myself. I'm Anitha Chirumamilla. I'm the Extension Cropping System Specialist at Langdon Research Extension Center. I just started my job this October. So I'm going to talk about some bug issues that we had in the last year, like 2021. And I think everybody knows or well experienced that how bad 2021 was. It was a drought year, and there were like issues with planting, and there was uneven growth, and then there was yield issues. But the silver lining is no disease, right? But who are the champions? The bugs were the champions. Now the populations went crazy, and all over the state we had so many bug issues. Out of all those, the champion was the grasshoppers. We had grasshopper issues everywhere, all over the state. And why this happened? Because grasshoppers love that dry and hot weather. They thrive in that hot weather. And it's like, but however, the grasshopper populations don't increase just in 1 year. It's just if there is an outbreak or high populations of grasshopper, it means that there are a few years ahead of that precedented with hot and dry conditions in the summer and warm falls. So those perfect conditions help the populations to build up slowly year by year, and we'll have the years like 2021 where their populations kind of go crazy and cause the crop damage. And here, grasshoppers, there are several different kinds of grasshoppers, but there are a few species that do cause damage to the crops. Like, as the name implies, grasshoppers, they usually tend to feed on the grasses and the weeds, but occasionally they do feed on the crops. And the four most common species which we see here, they all, if you notice, they have all the short antenna. They all belong to the same family, the Acrididae. They're called short-horned grasshoppers. And these are well known to cause damage to the crops. Well, this you can see, these are the two graphs that show how the grasshopper populations were in 2021. The left one was the grasshopper nymph numbers, and the right hand side we have the adult numbers. And you can see the scale is a little different because the color coordination is a little different. Here, in case of nymphs, red triangle is more than 50 nymphs per square yard, but for adults it's like red triangle is more than 3. So you can see, how bad the populations were and how bad the grasshopper populations all over the state. Okay, so how to understand an insect or how to target our management decisions is always the most important thing is learning the life cycle of an insect. And this is why it is so important to learn the life cycle of an insect is, if you know the biology of the insect, you know when to target the insect to get an effective control. And also you'll know how the weather has an impact on the development of the bug itself. So here, the grasshopper life cycle starts with eggs hatching in the spring. And those are the eggs you see there. And these eggs are like in a small pods. They are called egg pods, which have 8 to 25 individual eggs in that pod. So these egg pods, they kind of they overwinter or spend their winter in the egg pods, and then when the spring warm temperatures happen, they start hatching, and they go through 3 life stages: egg, nymph, and adult. What is the nymph? Nymph is a baby grasshopper. The only difference between an adult and a baby grasshopper is the babies don't have wings. They can't fly. They can only hop, but that's the only difference you can see. And the other one is they don't have well-developed reproductive parts. So the nymph, depending upon the species of the grasshoppers, there are 5 to 6 nymphal stages, and the final stage is adult. In the late summer, these adults, once they reach the adulthood, then they start mating, and then they start laying eggs. that overwinter. So this is the life cycle. How do we sample or how do we manage these grasshopper populations? The first and the foremost important thing is sampling. We need to know how many grasshoppers we have in our field or in our field edges. And the easiest way to do is take a standard 15-inch diameter sweep net and go 4 180-degree sweeps and collect those nymphs or adults, whichever are in the net, and count them. And you do this, repeat them 5 or 10 times and take the average, and that gives you the number of nymphs or adults per square yard. And you have the threshold is like where you need to look at the numbers and make your management decisions. And believe me, last year, there were farmers who had to spray more than twice for grasshoppers. Just they are nasty. And it's not that like you treat once and they're gone and you have taken care of them. They can just move in from the neighbor's field. So they had to spray multiple times to take care of this. And for the control measures, yes, chemical is the most commonly used and the most reliable technique, but tillage has a little effect on the eggs because tillage kind of destroys those egg pods in the spring and kills them. Well, the next insect I'm going to talk is diamondback moth. I don't know whether you had any issues with the diamondback moth last year.
We had a few, just little localized spots.
This is why we need to know what the life cycle of the insect is, because diamondback moth doesn't overwinter in North Dakota. Yeah. So that's why we don't see a uniform population or like, they don't start early in the season. They are migrating from south. So they are flying from south. And that's why we see them late in the season, depending on when they come to our state. And that's why we don't see them every year either. That's why it's an occasional pest.
You could find them kind of all over, but the real hot spots are kind of the same spot.
That is weird.
Yeah.
Because I've been scouting, and like now when you say that the fields that were previously hot had the same level of infestation. Now I recollect, like, yes, those same fields had heavy populations. But maybe it's the pattern of the winds that come in, and maybe those fields are in that zone of winds. I don't know. Yeah, it could be that's something mystery. Yeah, but yeah, this is an occasional pest, and we are noticing them more often. It's coming every year occurrence. I think it's becoming now, and depending on the time of the occurrence, also, it's like. The 2019, the populations kind of built up at the late end, and by the time farmers took notice of this insect, the damage was already done. So I think farmers are not aware of this insect, or they are not like looking for this insect actively because it is not an every year occurrence. So I thought like, okay, this a little information on this insect will help them to look more carefully or be on the lookout for this insect every year actually. And this is one of the most notorious or nasty insect, not just here, but it's worldwide. And this has a reputation of developing resistance to many insecticides. And here I have a reference which says like 100 unique active ingredients and more than 800 documented cases of insecticide resistance. That is nasty. And the other one is a Colorado potato beetle. So these two are the nastiest insects. And unfortunately, we have this insect in our county, in our area. It's becoming more and more common. And here, this is the the larva that causes the damage, and you can see how it causes at the initial stages of the larva. As soon as it hatches, it starts feeding on the green content of the leaf, the green part of the leaf, and you can see that membrane. It leaves the membrane, but it eats the green part, and that is a characteristic feature of how you identify this insect. Is if you see those kind of holes on the leaves, you can definitely say that it's a diamondback moth. And the other way to identify this larva is if you try to touch it, that larva kind of jerks and it frantically moves and it tries to fall from the leaf with a silk thread hanging. So that's it has that quick movement that is very characteristic to this diamondback moth. And okay, yeah.
So it doesn't bite all the way in the leaf?
Not at that young stage. And that membrane, when there is wind, that kind of flies away, and then there will be a hole, and it looks like a hole at the later stage, but initial stage they just feed the green content and leave the membrane. Yeah. But as they mature, and then they start venturing onto the flowers and flower buds and pods, and then they start feeding on them. And this is the final destruction they can do is like when I used to drive at the late and nearing that harvesting stage. If you see a field white, I can definitely say even from a distance that it is a diamondback moth damage. It's like literally white fields, and by that time the damage is already done. So last year I was driving by, and you can see fields and fields like just like those. The problem here is like most of the farmers, they realize that they have an issue after looking at that whiteness. And by that time, the damage is already done, and you pass that time of spraying. 1 year, 2000, I don't remember exactly, 2017 or 2018, a farmer called me at this stage. He called me, and I looked at it, and it was literally, and I asked him, like, how far are you to harvest this crop? And he said, like, in a week or 10 days, we are going to harvest. I said, like, I showed him all those, the pupae. And I said, like, I pulled a few plants and beat them, and nothing is falling, no larvae. And I said, like, he said, like, should I spray? And I said, like, at this point, if you spray, you are just spraying it for revenge. You're not going to kill them. Even if you want to take the revenge, it's not going to kill them because they are in the safe cocoons. The chemical can't touch them. Maybe a few of them will die, but most of them are protected. So it's just the timing of spraying is important if you know the biology of this insect. That's why I say it's very important to know the biology of the insect. And here, depending on when the moths fly into our fields, some years they come in June, some years they come in July, like last year they did, like late end of June. But when they come in late end of June, how much time do they have? Like they might go through one generation, or at the most they'll start the second generation. But if they come in May, they can go through 2 or 3 generations within the same season, because from the egg stage to the adult, it takes 25 to 30 days. They complete their generation and then start a new generation again. And so when the crop is at the most sensitive stage, like that's the flowering and pod development stage, that is the most sensitive or susceptible stage for the crop. And at that point, you can find eggs, larvae, adults, all the developmental stages at the same time because of that short development season that takes 20 or 30 days for them to go from egg to adult. And so there can be multiple generations within the same field at the same time. And that's why the last year the complaint was, I think maybe Jason, you guys have heard many farmers have sprayed for diamondback moth last year, twice, thrice. And they were complaining that they didn't control the diamondback moth, and they were suspecting pyrethroid resistance. I will talk about that in a minute. When a farmer comes and complains like, yes, I sprayed twice or thrice and it didn't take care of. Okay, what are the other variables we are talking about? Did you apply a full rate? Or what is the spray volume? What time did you spray? Or what, is it hot or dry? And, there was uniform coverage. Is it an aerial spray or a land spray? All these conditions make a difference. And also the other variable is, okay, you sprayed, you saw the control. There might be the second generation of the eggs that hatched after you sprayed, and there might be another generation of larvae which you see when you come next time, which you didn't get them the first time, because it depends on the residual again of the insecticide. So all these factors, you should, I think whenever a farmer asks that question, I think we need to ask all these questions to him. And confirming a resistance is you can do only if you can do a lab study and confirm, okay, yes, this is resistant to pyrethroids. That's what we did for soybean aphids in 2019. When that happened, we collected the populations and we did a bioassay and confirmed the resistance. So that should be done to confirm. But given the history of this insect, I wouldn't be surprised to see if they're resistant to pyrethroids. They could very well be, but we haven't confirmed it in North Dakota. And that might be a future study. But again, confirming resistance for a migratory insect, okay, you do next year, you do a study and confirm the resistance. The following year, what guarantee is there that those insects are coming from the same location back? You cannot tell. So that's the challenge with this kind of insects. It's the same thing with soybean aphid, it's the same thing with diamondback moth. But at least if we know that these insects have a history of pyrethroid or whatever group insecticide we are testing, unfortunately, we have very few groups that are registered for diamondback moth in North Dakota. I think if we lose pyrethroids, that would be a big problem. And I can see that it's not very far. See, that's the thing, like when they are like in the early instar stage, they tend to feed on the leaves. They stay on the leaves. And as they mature, they start slowly crawling up and reaching out to the pods. And the problem is not so much, if the pod is already developed and it's only that the seeds are fully developed, I don't think the scraping of the green content would damage the pod or the seed, or it would affect the yield. The problem is that scarring would cause shattering. That would be the concern at that stage. So I don't know if the shatter resistant varieties are more resistant to that or not. Nobody said anything to me, but maybe you have more information regarding that.
I don't know. There was some scarring and stuff. I was kind of wondering how it would affect test weight, just because it's not really, it's affecting its full development on it should have.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
We had some shattering, but it really didn't boil down. It definitely didn't boil down to diamondback. Yeah, in maybe the high pressure area in that little half the size of this room or something like that. But I think a lot of the shattering this year was just drought related. Some of
Okay. It could be
stuff that I saw in the stress. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's what I thought a lot of it was, because it just, a lot of it just didn't seem to be bug related. But
because one farmer who said I had a heavy diamondback moth damage and there was severe yield loss and it was because of shattering, he said.
You're not wrong.
It was horrible.
So,
well, there was so you can have multiple generations there.
Mm-hmm.
And the weather we had too, if we're primarily using pyrethroids, they just don't like that weather.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, they like it 60 degrees, relatively cloudy, then you get it's sunny, your residuals down, maybe 3 days residuals. If that.
Yeah, that could very well be the reason. Yeah. All these factors, yes, that's the possibilities of that's the thing. Like, the first thing that comes to farmers' mind is if they sprayed and they didn't get a control, means they say immediately it's resistance. Most of the times it is not. So, okay, favorite topic, flea beetles. I think this is the most destructive and the most annoying insect in my area, at least. Everybody hates these beetles. I don't know. I know everybody knows that there are two kinds of beetles: the black, which is the crucifer beetle, and the striped one. For now, or even up to now, we still have the crucifers as our major flea beetles. We still have low numbers of stripes, but we need to keep an eye on the stripes because they are slowly increasing in their populations. And I will tell you why we need to keep an eye on it, because they are a little dangerous than the black ones. And canola beetle life cycle, everybody knows. I don't have to talk about this more. But every year when I was a county agent, the one question I used to get for sure is, do seed treatments even work? Why do we use these seed treatments on canola? Well, I didn't have answers at that time, but now I can at least talk about them. Okay, that's what I'm going to present. And this study was conducted by Leslie Lubinow. This is her PhD. This is present project work, and under the advisorship of Dr. Jan Conordal. Okay, so these slides are from Jan. So I'm kind of acknowledging her. And so what Leslie tested was these three these are the seed treatment options that are available for us right now on canola. Okay, 3 different neonics and the diamides. This is a new group, that is group 28. Cyantraniliprole, it's called Lumiderm, and then there is a new chemical that looks more optimistic, buteostat, butenolides. This is a group 40. This is a new one that is brand new, and it shows more promising. I won't show the data, but Jam feels so confident that it's looking very promising. This is Leslie conducting the study. She conducted a greenhouse study, and she tested 3 different seed treatments. That's Prosper, Helix, and Lumiderm, and with an untreated check. And this was, she conducted twice, this experiment. And have to notice that, like, these plants were infested at 2 different points. Like, one is 7 days after planting, and the other one is 14 days after planting. And in each container, there were 5 plants, and there were 10 beetles released into each container. So 2 beetles per plant. And live counts and feeding injury ratings were taken at 3, 7, and 10 days after infestations. Okay, but I'm going to present the data at 7 and 10 days. You see here. This is the crucifer flea beetle, which is the orange bar, and blue one is the striped flea beetles. And the first one is both the figures are the mortality and feeding rates on day 7 after infestation. Day 7, okay, remember this day. And you can see the trend, okay? You can see on the x-axis, you have the 3 different chemicals at 2 different points of introducing, right? 7 days after planting and 14 days after planting. And so you can see the trend of the bars. After 7 days, you can see thiamethoxam, yep, about a little 80% mortality. 7 days after infestation, okay? And then the other clothianidin and cyantraniliprole Yeah, they are about little 90 above mortality. But then see the feeding rate. Yeah, it's kind of lower. This is the untreated control. Okay, the left end. Those are the controls. The control had a very high feeding rating compared to all the insecticide treatments. Right? This is day 10 after infestation. Yeah, now the mortality rate went high. It's almost like getting there to 100% mortality. But look at the feeding rating. It went up high too. Right? Except cyanide, that is aluminum. Okay, now get back again. Let's go back again. Now see the difference between striped and crucifer. The mortality was significantly lower than the crucifer flea beetle, which tells us like these are resistant to all the seed treatments. And the feeding rates, they kept on feeding, right? All the feeding rates, they're so yeah, data-wise, if you want to talk numbers, the conclusion is yes, all insecticide treatments are better than control, right? According to what you see in the graphs. And they had lower feeding injury compared to untreated plots. The thing is, one noticeable thing is that the new group, the diamide group, the lumiderm, it had comparatively better performance compared to thiamethoxam and the Prosper and the Helix. But the thing is, striped flea beetles had decreased mortality and increased feeding injury. That tells us that none of these chemicals are effective against or less effective on striped compared to crucifer. Okay, what is the take-home message then? Often, okay, if we treat the beetles in the fall, would we see a difference in the next year? Okay. Well, maybe if you are the only canola grower in the area and you do that, maybe that also doesn't guarantee because these are strong flyers. They can come from anywhere, right? Especially in Cavalier County, where you have 250 to 300,000 acres of canola.
Yeah.
And these flea beetles are not coming from your field. They are coming from ditches and shelter belts. And so you might kill the population that is right now in your field, but you can't kill everything else